Now, it's puzzling, particularly to a person in the United States, how this variability in ritual could have arisen. And I think it goes back to Masonic history. I would say that the magic year in American history is 1776. The magic year in English Masonry is 1717. That's a magic number that's worth remembering. Here's what happened. Prior to 1717, we really don't know much about Masonic history. And suddenly, beginning with 1717, we know quite a bit about Masonic history. Well, it becomes quite specific. The first Grand Lodge, and you have to get the terminology correct because it becomes misleading. We should refer to the first Masonic Grand Lodge in the world as the premier Grand Lodge. This took place in England, not someplace else. The first, that is the premier Grand Lodge, came into existence in the year 1717. Well, then things quickly changed and began to get more complicated. In a few years, there were some, by the way, prior to this time, there were no Grand Lodges anywhere. There were Masonic lodges, but they were autonomous. They had self-existence, and the best one going back in history, this is prior to 1717, was in Scotland. There was a lodge called Kilwinning. It's maybe the oldest known lodge. Self-existent. I don't think they know how it started. And they, in turn, chartered a few other lodges, but there were no Grand Lodges. So suddenly in 1717, we had a Grand Lodge. And then things started happening. I've said that we have a supposition, erroneous, that Masonry has never changed. That's when change started taking place. After the first Grand Lodge was formed in 1717, a few years later, there was another Grand Lodge formed, and they produced a misconception. They referred to themselves as the ancients, implying that they were older than the other, and so the first Grand Lodge were referred to as moderns. So when you're in conversation, you have to be careful not to be confused by supposition. You be careful and know that the terminology is upside down. The premier Grand Lodge, the first one, is the one that they referred to as moderns. And the Johnny-come-latelys were known as the ancients. And that, what happened, they sort of intruded, and they claimed that they had customs that were older. They just claimed this, and they claimed to be the ancients with ancient usage. So this impressed people, and Masonry has had a tendency to prefer things that are ancient and have that are long established. So this is one of the early misconceptions in Masonry, that there were ancients that came first and then the moderns, and it's the other way around.
And I understand there was a lot of bickering back and forth. There was animosity between the two.
There was some animosity, even some political animosity. And it so happens, and this now goes back near 1717 and before, there's uncertainty how many degrees there were. And the serious Masonic student should personally try to look into this. This is an area I have not gone back this far, but I understand that in the beginning there was only 1 or 2 degrees, not 3. We know that in the basic lodge that we have today, that it's been in existence for centuries, there are 3 degrees, period. At that time, there was 2, maybe only 1. And then, after the ancients emerged, then things started happening. They started having additional degrees. They introduced the Haremic legend, which didn't exist before. They invented the lost word, which they didn't have before. A lot of these things that we assume go clear back to 300 BC, maybe.
Yeah.
They sprang into existence, and things started getting interesting, and so there was a lot of change and a lot of evolution. So this is why there is such a multiplicity of degrees, is that there was a multiplicity of customs early on, shortly after 1717. Now in England, we're told that internationally there's somewhere around 100 different versions of the first 3 degrees. In England, the information I have is that there are approximately 30. And not all of them are equally popular. I'd like to describe, or at least give the names of some of these degrees.
Sure.
If there are 30 or 20 of them, it'd be good to know what their names are.
Yeah.
It'd be good to know what the name of our version is.
Yeah.
We just call it the American version, or we say it's the version of Masonry. None other exists.
Exactly.
Well, there is a name for ours, and it's a name everyone should know. I'll mention in a few minutes. But in England, there are 2 versions of the work that are most popular. One is called the emulation version, and the other is the stability version. These are arbitrary names, but in England, everyone knows which is which. There is one version in England that deviates the most from the others. Now, in England, they don't feel that this is bad. Mm-hmm. But if any of us visit England, it is a must. You really have to go visit this other odd version. This is in the district of Bristol. So if anybody viewing this film visits England, on the top of their must list is to visit Bristol and visit the Bristol work. They have swords in lodge, and they have some other ornate things that happen. Not too far up, but it's different. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're interested in some of this, there are a number of books, believe it or not, comparing some aspects of these different versions of the ritual. And one of the most popular books, it's by an author by the name of Cartwright. I call it Cartwright's Commentary, but that's not the full name. But if you are in England and you say you want to see a copy of Cartwright's Commentary, I think even public libraries have a copy of it, or you can buy one. Or if you're here in Oregon or Washington and would like to get a copy, you can probably get a copy. If you're in British Columbia, you can probably get a copy. And so Cartwright's book is a good one to have.